Well, I mean, San Diego State's obviously a really good team. What does stand out about them when you start breaking them down?
Well, much better shooting. They've always been, I think, over the years, really good defensively. Coach Fisher, now Dutch, they've always hung their hat that way, and I've always thought and felt like they've been one of the best defensive teams, and that's going back now, almost 20 years. So they've done a really good job establishing that. And I think what makes this team a little bit different is that they can score out of a lot of different players and at a high level. Obviously, getting the Vandy transfer, getting Flynn from Washington State, those were, I think, big pieces to this year's team. But they're just really, really good at every position defensively and can score. So when you look at trying to set up your defense, you're really not playing off of anybody. You're really just trying to control things as best as you can. They still play relatively, I think, the same way that I remember from my New Mexico days. It's just, in my mind, they're just so much more potent offensively than they've ever been, and I think that's why they've been so dangerous.
It's not an easy place to win
No.
either. It's the only place Nevada has not won in since moving to the Mountain West. What is it about that environment? What do you remember from the games that you played?
Yeah, when I was in the league, obviously BYU was in the league, Utah was in the league, TCU was in the league when I was at New Mexico, and I always thought the pit at New Mexico, San Diego State, UNLV, Lon was there and had it rolling. So UNLV was a very difficult place to play. BYU, hard place to play. And then in certain years, Utah was. So San Diego State consistently, over the last 12, 15 years, I think has been a very, very difficult place to play. One, incredible student section. Not only do they get them by numbers, they're there loud and they're there early and they get after it. And they just, I think that's the one thing Fish did and Dutch alongside of him. They didn't really have much of a culture there, and they've developed an incredible culture on the West Coast that you don't see much anywhere else on the West Coast as far as consistent crowds and an energy in a building. That's you don't see that a lot.
There's been some discussion, maybe, is this the best team the Mountain West has ever had? You went against the Jimmer Fredette, the Kawhi Leonard teams. I mean, how does this team kind of stack up to some of the greats that you coached against?
Yeah, it's hard. Selfishly, we think we're there too, and we had some teams that, won 30-plus games. I think you got to wait to see how it finishes out. Obviously, when you look at the Mountain West teams of the past, and as far as the start, I don't know if there's been too many that have started 18-0. Now you got to wait and probably see until it finishes to where you make probably more comparisons of that. But obviously, when we were there, not just Kawhi's teams, but we had some great wars with San Diego State when we were at New Mexico. They had really, really good teams. BYU had a stretch there with Jimmer that was awfully good. So, and then, going back further than that, it's hard for me to even, remember those type of things. But there was a triangle of big-time wars of really, really, when BYU left, first it was Jimmer's teams, but then when BYU left, it was San Diego State, UNLV, and New Mexico. And we had some great, great contests that way. But this team, watching them on film, and just the things I've been able to dive into, there's just not any weaknesses. They've got good depth, really good guard play. You can throw it to them in the post, and they still defend the way San Diego State defends. So, this is you got to wait to see how it plays out, but this is a potential, in my mind, a potential 1-2 seed in the NCAA tournament.
They got 3 transfers. They're playing their first year there, or I think among the top 4 scorers. Are you surprised they've blended it together so quickly, just in terms of new guys?
Well, it seems to be the trend. It seems to be the trend now in recruiting. That kind of goes in different waves. Sometimes, 15 years ago, it was all about building things with just freshmen, and then you kept develop them and wait until they get old. And now, you look at our recruiting class. We've signed 5 freshmen, but we're adding Warren and Desmond. So you're adding 2 Warren won't be upperclassmen yet. It'll just be a sophomore. But you're adding 2 transfers to the mix just with us. So transfers have become vitally important, I think, and you're seeing that. I think San Diego State would have been good regardless, but they're great because of the additions they've gotten through transfers.
You went back and looked at the Wyoming game and broke down the film. What were your thoughts just on how you guys played?
Yeah, just we've been through a 3-game stretch here, Chris, where leaving from the Boise game, just not I guess I've been disappointed with just the overall 40 minutes of just energy and enthusiasm to our play, and that's what we're trying to get back to. And obviously this is a difficult game to get back to, but if you don't have that, you got no shot. And so if our guys want to take advantage of something that nobody else in the country this weekend has, that advantage of playing, the only undefeated team, a top 10 team in their building, so you look at it as it's a tremendous opportunity, or you worry about that, and there's only one way to approach it. So I just want to see our energy and enthusiasm come back, and for whatever reason, it's been hard to figure that out. I mentioned it after the Wyoming game. Sometimes done it for so long, sometimes the break, when you have nobody on campus, you get into different routines and your rest gets different and you stay up late. And I'm not saying that's what our guys are doing, but something is, and maybe it's just because it's long. You've gone through the summer. We got together with most of these guys from about June on. So it just becomes long, and you get in a stretch where, okay, we've just gone through a tough stretch. Let's find our way out of it. And, again, going to San Diego State's not an easy way of finding our way out of it, but we've just got to get that energy, that mojo back that I think we had through about a 3-week, 4-week span that I really liked. And I think the last 3 games we haven't had that. And the positive was we found a way to grind out a win against Wyoming. I don't think it was because of 40 minutes of energy and that type of thing. And we've got to learn that this season's long, so how you take care of yourself, how you prepare, it may get to where, okay, we're 3 months into this, but you've got to create habits that every game you try to get better. And it's easier said than done, especially with an inexperienced group. I think sometimes I say that a lot, but it's not just the inexperience of playing. We got a lot of guys that haven't played at San Diego State. So they're gonna see what that's like for the first time. But a lot of these guys have not had to endure a break from school and still play games. And so sometimes that can be different. And we just got to learn from it and hopefully get back to playing with a lot more energy.
How do you get energy into a team as a coach? That seems like a difficult thing.
Yeah, and we're changing things up. We're changing things up this week in practice. Of how much is body-on-body contact versus just teaching versus a little bit more individual development, focusing on maybe some things that players are struggling with, now taking them and working with them, trying to get just each individual back to knowing what their role is, redefining those things, going over those things, and a little bit less body-on-body contact. Just to see if that helps. So it's like changing things up, shortening or lengthening film sessions and shortening or lengthening practices. You just try to, when they're in a little bit of a rut, just try to do something that mixes that up. Maybe it's taking them to lunch tomorrow down on the water. I don't know. Just anything that can just get that, we're going to at least get into some warm weather, and maybe that's it. It's you just try to find different things to create some different energies that they've just gotten a little stale, and we got to shake them from that.
Are you surprised that San Diego State's the last unbeaten team in the country?
Well, surprise isn't the word for me, because I wouldn't be able to predict at the beginning of the season who would be undefeated towards the third week in January. So it's just very impressive that you can go through a non-conference schedule, road games, neutral games, tournaments, and now almost to the midpoint. We're a third of the way through the conference anyway. You're a third of the way through the conference, and I think if my board's right, they've had 4 wins away from home. So you've done that already through the conference season. And you've played one team in Fresno twice, which is unusual when you're not even halfway point from a scheduling standpoint. And the league's disrupted. You play early December, you come back then in early January. So what they've done is nothing, less than very, very impressive. So, and they're winning games, a lot of different ways. Watching film, Iowa had them down 16 in the first half on a neutral floor. They come back and win that game. They had San Jose down, 8, 9, 10 points, and San Jose makes a huge one of those deals where you're behind and you start making everything, and really had them beat at home, and they make a huge shot to win that game. They've found ways to win, which has been impressive, and it's a very impressive team watching it on tape. So it always tells me, with the experience I've had, when they're that impressive on tape, it usually is even better in person. So that's kind of the scary part.
How much does your familiarity with this game?
Well, it helps me because I've got a great respect of just how good he is, because he was really good at Washington State, on teams that weren't very good. And he was the one guy that you had to prepare for, and yet he still found a way to beat you and do things that help their team try to be successful. So now he got a redshirt year last year, so he's just older. He's more experienced. He's obviously the catalyst. Doesn't stop there, but I think it does start with him. He's very, very good at creating offense for himself and his teammates. And from what I've seen on tape, he's really improved defensively from the Pac-12 days. And so he's just one of those guys that, from a coaching standpoint, you like seeing, guys that have stayed with it, and they've just grown every year, both offensively and defensively. And Malachi's one of those guys, and I think arguably one of the better players in our league.
In a time like this where you're trying to create a little bit more energy for some of the newer guys who haven't gone through this scheduling change before, how important is it for the older guys to lean on them?
It's huge. It's huge, and we're tackling that the best we can as well. And again, if Jazz had been in the role he's in this year for the last 2 or 3 years, had Lindsey not been out for the better part of a year and a half, Niz in the role that he's in, it's hard for them, and I feel for them in that way, but I continue to tell them it is what it is, guys. You have to be the leaders. You have to bring that energy, and even to Jalen, who's gotten off to a terrific start to his college career here. He's done a tremendous job this year, but now we're asking more out of those 4 guys from a leadership standpoint. Even JC, who's been in the ACC, but not in much of a role, and now he's thrown in a much larger role here at Nevada, but he doesn't know a whole lot about this area or the Mountain West. So a lot of these guys Jazz trying to figure out his role. That is not, and when I say figuring out, it's just at a higher level. So now he's guarding one of the best players. He's never had to do that in the past. He's guarding arguably the best player on the opponent's teams, and we're asking him to be one of our leading scorers. He's never had that role. Lindsey's never had the role he's had. Niz hardly played last year. He's in a different role. So I get it. They're trying to do that role the best they can, but that other crucial role is how they lead these young guys, and not just make sure they're ready, but make sure these young guys know. And we got different personalities that they're trying to do that with as well. So I understand it's hard, but being good's hard, and winning games in league play is hard. And so that's really the message we're trying to send the guys, that there's nothing easy about it. I saw Coach Krzyzewski give a press conference. I just happened to have the TV on. I saw his words after his team lost at Clemson, and his whole message was his young players trying to understand how hard it is to win in league play. I don't care if you're home, road. Wyoming hadn't won a game. They fought us and played about as well as they've played. I mean, it is hard to win league games, and I think our guys are still trying to figure out just how hard it is. And once that is figured out, then I think you'll see this team and the program go to the next level. But that's something that's got to be learned for sure.
When you look at Jazz, what's made him successful given he's 5'10"?
Just how he works, Chris. He works so hard. I mean, we almost have to tell him to get out of the gym at times because he spends so much time working on his trait and his skill. And the thing I've been impressed with Jazz is that he really went from a guy that stood in each corner and waited for one of the Martins to penetrate and kick, or a post guy to kick it out to him, or he got something in transition in a spot up, to where now he's moving, and he's got to learn how to read defenses and come off screens. And I think that's why you see him sometimes, he comes off a screen and he's wide open and he doesn't shoot it. He's still learning to read defenses, to know that when you catch it, you got to know what you're going to do then. Is it shot? Is it shot fake? Is it drive? Is it immediately pass? Not hold it. And so he's doing a really good job of learning a whole new system, a whole new way of getting his shot. And then we're telling him to really guard. And I think maybe we were wore down a little bit too. It was a tough 10-day stretch, and especially Lindsey, Jalen, and Jazz, we've got to watch what they do in practice as we get here now late into January, because we're asking those guys to play. Those 3 guys are playing 32 plus at least, and to do that at the level we need them to, both offensively and defensively, we gotta watch them a little bit in practice, but we're not real deep. We don't have a lot of guys in practice, and a lot of the class schedules affected us in the first semester. We had a lot of again, just putting not to bore you, but putting in our whole program, getting a 3-hour window where there's no classes. Sounds simple, but it was an issue. And so our practice times were cut and guys had to leave practice. And so you're not getting to put in as much as you want to put in and emphasize. And we've tried to take this break time to do that. But we got to be careful that we're not wearing down those 3 guys because we're asking a lot of them on game day.
I think according to the metrics, Jazz is maybe your best defender, among your best defenders. Is that surprising? Why?
As far as defensive efficiency, when he's on the court, he does rank out the best. And I think it's just because of how hard he works. He provides great ball pressure. He works off the ball. He's going to continue to work at being a better help defender. And I think that's where he takes his next step. But as far as on-ball pressure, listening to what we want to do as far as guarding the best player, he's done an exceptional job of doing that all year. But he brings energy at that level.
Thanks, Coach.
I appreciate it. Thank you.